Are we live? Yes, looks like we are live. Well, greetings, everyone, my followers of darkness, shadow scavengers, and villain aficionados. Welcome to another Villains Review episode. I'm your host, Lord of Shadows, here today with you, like always. Now, the Klingons usually have a saying that revenge is a dish that is better served cold. But I will also add with that sometimes revenge can be so powerful that it will give you a sole reason for living in a way that it can bring the most vile, the most darkest being back to life. And one of them we're going to talk about in this particular episode. More precisely, a villain that is part of one of my most favorite franchises ever since I was a child, Pirates of the Caribbean, more precisely, the main villain of the fifth one, Dead Men Tell No Tales, or to be a little bit on the nose, Salazar's Revenge. Yes, we're going to talk about Captain Armando Salazar, Captain of the Silent Mary, and theoretically one of the first villains that Jack Sparrow ever faced before the whole ghost thing happened and all. Now, to kind of brief you a little bit about Captain Salazar, who he is, if you never watched the fifth Pirates of the Caribbean movie in general, basically Captain Armando Salazar, he was part of the Spanish Royal Navy as a pirate hunter. He was the captain of the Silent Mary, and basically he had this like holy mission, or should I say, holy crusade in his head, to basically to wipe out every single pirate across the seven seas. So the seas, as he would put it, can finally be pure. But of course, everything for him got screwed up when he met, for the very first time, Jack Sparrow in his younger days, where he basically screwed them up to basically sail towards the Devil's Triangle, where he basically met his doom, or more precisely, his first doom. Then, through like mystical powers of the Devil's Triangle, he returned back to life. For a brief period of time, he was imprisoned there until like finally, through the Jack Sparrow shenanigans, like always, he was released from the Devil's Triangle, and basically now he hunted down Jack Sparrow because he wanted revenge. Now, I spoke about another Pirates of the Caribbean a long time ago in my Villains Review Season 1, which was more precisely, I talked about Davy Jones. And I always said that for me personally, Salazar was always to me like my second best favorite, like Pirates of the Caribbean villain. Everything about him, I thought it was like, very fascinating, from like his character, motivations, the goal, literally everything. And of course, not to mention, adding Javier Bardem's performance. You can't go wrong with that. Now, Captain Salazar, like, again, speaking of like, when it comes to like, curses, ghosts, and everything, like his overall character is very like, how can I put it, old-fashioned, very classical, like, type of villain. Like basically, he was, basically, like a long time ago, he was defeated by, an old adversary. He died, then he got cursed, and then basically rise up back from the dead, with this like one purpose only, which of course, most of the time, is usually revenge, especially when it comes to ghosts, usually like when a ghost comes back to life, usually comes back to life with a purpose. And as of course, as Salazar did, I think like, I always wonder, even when I was watching the movie, I always wonder that the reason why he was brought back to life is because of like this hatred and pain and anger that he felt because of like, what Jack Sparrow did to him in his younger days. Basically, I think like that's the thing that kind of drew him into to the villain that we know him, in the fifth movie and everything, because usually now when it comes to like, supernatural, usually like, when you have a ghost, they usually always come back with a purpose, as of course for Salazar, his purpose is revenge, which again, we already seen throughout many different types of fiction. We have already seen villains who their main goal is basically revenge against their main hero, basically because of something that they have done to them, many many years ago, like in their younger days or in like in a very near past, whatever. It's a very like again, I always said like when it comes to revenge, just like world domination, it's a very very typical old school villain goal. And again we prove, and again we have this proof with Captain Salazar. Now the thing is like when it comes to Captain Salazar, like I mean I can go on and on about like he's positives when it comes to overall as a villain. I mean like from just simply being intimidating and diabolical and scary. I mean not just simply. I mean if you look at him when he was human, he was like I would say intimidating. He really represented like as someone who's like a very strong leader, very like convicted, like convicted into its own purpose, its own crusade, as I like to say. Basically, someone basically who sees himself as the hero of its own story. So that's basically how he was in life. But then he became a ghost. You could kind of say he's like a fallen hero of its own story, who now basically lives out of revenge, basically for what Jack Sparrow did to him. I mean, when you look at him as a villain itself, like again, outside the ghost thing and everything, he is basically a soldier. He's basically, as I said, from like the medals, the uniform and everything, like he is part of he was part of the Spanish Royal Navy, back in the day and everything, so he had everything. He had high level intellect, military tactics, strategy as well. He was, well trained, in the sword combat, maybe even hand to hand combat. I mean, like, who knows? When you're trained to be a soldier or even an officer, you need to have some combat skills in general. Not simply like simple sword fight. So and throughout the movie, we've seen that. We've seen that, the way how he thinks, the way how he makes some tactics, and the way how he fought against Jack Sparrow and everything. Like I mean like we have seen Salazar have some combat skills, that's for sure, and also high level intellect and everything. But the one thing also I will admit, which again throughout the movie was very rarely seen, but I will do admit that there were some times where you can also mention that Salazar was a little bit unpredictable. Like for example, like for example with the actions that he did with Barbosa, for example. Like I mean, when he first met him, although I will never forget that scene where Barbosa literally shit his pants when Salazar was behind his back and everything, doing the that hard breathing and everything. Like it was terrifying. I mean, I would say as a villain, I would say he was actually way more terrifying as a ghost than when he was alive. I mean, even Cutler Beckett, I believe, would have shit his pants when he saw him. But anyway, like I said, he basically proved himself to be sometimes unpredictable. Like like I said, for example, when he met Barbosa, at the very in that scene where he said like dear dad, this pirate wishes to be cordial. So let me show him my cordiality is, hombre. Every time I tap my sword, one of our men will die. So I suggest you speak quickly. And then, boom, one tap of the sword, one man dies. Might want to go a bit faster, Capitan. And then 1, 2, 2 men die, And then, like, basically, in the end, where, like, Barbosa and him made a deal and everything, you can see, like, basically when Barbosa said, and thank you on behalf of my crew. And then you hear, like Salazar tapping, like, I think it was like 4 or 5 times. I think he tapped with the sword, with his sword and everything. And then he said, "Hey, you could take what's left of them." Like that was like, like that was a bit unpredictable. Especially when it comes to Barbosa and everything. Like, that part alone, you kind of feel that this kind of like unpredictability that Salazar had and everything. So, so that, I give him that. I do give him that. But the one thing that I've always found interesting in characters like Salazar is that when you look, when you look for him like for the entire movie, what is the one thing that driving for the entire movie? Of course, I said before, it was revenge, it was hatred, it was anger, a little bit even frustration. Like for example, like and even like the one thing I also noticed is that Salazar sometimes is impatient as well, because like, especially when he was like with Barbosa, and he was trying to make a deal with him to kind of get him to Jack Sparrow and everything. And I love like some moments where you can see like he's short tempered. Like for example, like realizing, that if he's going after the Shrine of Poseidon, that he's going to try to find a way to escape him again, and when he's like, nah, there's no treasure that can save him. You can see like that frustration, that anger and hatred, that he had for Jack Sparrow, like, it also kind of, again, give him that, a little bit like a PTSD, from from all the way back, because I can believe for Salazar, like, that for him was like yesterday, what Jack Sparrow did to him, even though there's been a long, long time, since that day, but I do believe for him, that was like yesterday, Now, again, there are a few times in Captain Salazar's character, like I said, being so much obsessed with revenge, destroying everything in his path, just so he can get to Jack Sparrow. Like even like one time when he went right through like a British, Royal Navy ship, just so he can get to Jack Sparrow. Like, he didn't give a shit about anything. Like, no, he's just gonna swallow that ship, destroy it in half, just so he can get to the Black Pearl. Like, I don't give a shit about anything else, And from, and then again, this is kind of one of those moments where you can see that he was obsessed with Jack Sparrow, like, or even like, for example, like even at the very end when he turned back to human, when he was like hunting him down, trying to get up the anchor and try to destroy him and everything, he didn't give a shit about the crew as well. Even though I will admit, the crew. Now, when you usually have henchmen, usually when it comes to villainy, very rarely you will see villains that henchmen. Sorry, very rarely you will see minions that will follow a villain, with like solid gold loyalty, no reason to fear him, no reason, to be forced or anything, because the entire crew follow them without any reason why they need to follow him. Like they were like extremely loyal to him. I mean, one of the reasons I believe is because they believe in the same cause as Salazar did. I mean, on some perspective, basically, And again, he was driven so much into revenge that he didn't give a shit at the end. That he didn't give a shit about his own crew. Like he didn't give a shit if they stay there, at the bottom of the ocean, just simply, the ocean closing down and them drowning and everything. Like he didn't give a shit about that, because that is something that it's something that I kind of came up with, like, especially when it comes to villains who are obsessed with vengeance. I call it, I used to call it like Captain Ahab syndrome, where basically you have villains, from like good old fashioned, Herman Melville, Moby Dick, and where Captain Ahab, is obsessed with a white whale, try to catch him with no matter what, like, even if it costs him his ship, his crew, like he needs to get him, he needs to kill him because, he cut off his leg and everything, So that kind of syndrome in a way you can see in Salazar. Like the only reason, and like he will do whatever it takes, even in allying with pirates, the thing that he hates, he will even ally with them just so he can get to Jack Sparrow. And I will even say this, just like with Captain Ahab, which is the reason why I call it Captain Ahab syndrome, is that the same thing that drew him into, again, like the same thing that drew him into this was also his downfall, which again is revenge and hatred towards Jack Sparrow. Those are the same things that he kind of, that draw him into this, but at the same time was also his downfall, because when you have villains who are drawn through vengeance and everything, and they don't give a shit about anything that is going on around them, that most of the time can be their downfall. Like those are usually the type of villains that not only that are fearless, not only they're not afraid of anything, but they're also the same time those are the kind of villains that literally like nobody can stop. Like no one can reason with them. No one can try to even make an argument. Like they will destroy everything in their paths just so they can get what they want. So in some capacity, you can even say, that these crew are basically sheep, following this, following their madman captain, to on the hunt for Jack Sparrow, even though in the same time I can see them blaming him, for what happened to them and everything. Now, one of the things I also love about Salazar, and again, I believe, like, again, for the entire movie, he wanted vengeance on Jack Sparrow, but like, let's just say this. Let's make an argument. If he killed Jack Sparrow, if he got what he wanted, if he gotten his revenge, what would have been next for him? Think about it. Like, what would have been next for him? Again, he's got the Poseidon. He's got the Trident of Poseidon. He killed Jack Sparrow. He could have easily killed Karina and Will Turner's son. No cost. He would have destroyed the Black Pearl, I believe, easily. So what would be after that? I believe that he would have continued the same goal that he had when he was alive. I think he would have hunted down every single pirate so he can wipe them out from the face of the earth. Because again, like I told you, like, when he was alive, he was, even though you can definitely see he had no mercy. He was cold as ice. Like, he will destroy them, like, even like there was this one scene in the flashback where he literally was like bombing with his cannons, like all other pirate ships, like destroying them one after the other with no hesitation, no like worries, nothing. And then there was this one point where his second in command, with the one with the eye patch, told him they're begging for mercy, and literally like they were wearing the white flag and everything. And he was like, mercy? Mercy? There's no mercy. And he took a bite of the apple. He's like, like, shoot him, kill them, like no hesitation. He's like, like, there's no mercy. Who gives a fuck? Kill them all, because, even like, because like because you could, just for that, you can see he hated pirates. He hated them, like for him, he was like, they were like the scum of the earth. Even like, I remember like there was one scene with Barbosa where, he was telling to Salazar, like, I heard stories of the mighty Spanish captain, El Matador del Mar, the man who scoured the seas, hunted and killed thousands of men. And he's like, no, men, no. Pirates, eh? Pirates. Like, for him, like, men and pirates are a totally different thing. Like, he wouldn't even consider like normal men pirates. Like it's like, it's like he sees pirates as like they were like monsters or something. Like he would never consider them even human in a way. And again, you could kind of also see that maybe the reason why he wanted to end this plague basically is because they take the life of his father and his father before him. So you can also kind of see the kind of like personal like one of the reasons why he hunts down pirates, maybe like a personal matter or something, because like what they did to his fathers before him and everything. You kind of make that argument as well. But overall, like I said, I mean, he is a very interesting villain. I would say this, and in like with lots of like elements that I really found fascinating. That's for sure. Now, again, one of the things I will also mention that, alongside this obsession for Jack Sparrow, the hatred and everything he got because of him, like I didn't mention that it was his downfall, but at the same time, when we're talking about weaknesses about Salazar, is he also showed arrogance. He also showed a little bit of stubbornness. He also showed a little bit of like, egomania, in his character, and usually you will have that, especially like, villains who are like the heroes of their own story, or in this case, fallen heroes of their own stories, basically, So all of that like kind of played a role in his downfall, if you're gonna look at it that way. But in the end, I would say that the main award goes to obsession for vengeance that kind of destroyed him in the end. Just like the same way, like that's why I called it. Just like the same thing with Captain Ahab. Like I said, he took the whole ship, the crew with him, and by the end, he tied himself up on the whale, basically. Trying to kill him and everything. And kind of same thing happened, with Captain Salazar as well. Although cut off the whale and the rope thing because he wasn't tied up to a whale or even to the anchor. But either way, that was kind of like his downfall. But and again, I think but again, like one of the strongest features, it also sometimes can be used as a good thing, but also as a bad thing for villains, is that Salazar is fearless. Like he doesn't fear anything. I mean, it kind of gives you an idea why he's not afraid of anything. Because he's a fucking ghost. Nothing can stand in his way. Nobody can kill him. He literally go through anything and all of that. Now I did mention before, that he has a little bit of an egomania in a way. And it kind of shows like in one particular moment, or should I say one particular political traditional thing that he does, which of course is every time when he attacks like another ship, he always leaves one man alive to tell the tale, to kind of spread the word, that now, not just, about Salazar and his crew, that he's coming, that now that the seas belong to him and everything, which again, which again, not the very traditional thing that villains would do. I mean, some villains in fiction, they do this, but not all of them, Usually they will wipe out everybody. But he's, so in this way, even though you could kind of see this he just simply is doing that, so he can spread fear, to everyone who tries to go to the open scene, because, in a chance to basically clash with him and the Silent Mary. But at the same time, you can also see a little bit of ego, in that action, living one man alive and everything, that's for sure. But I will say when it comes to a villain, I always thought the reason why I always see Salazar kind of like my second favorite to Davy Jones, because alongside Davy Jones, Salazar is also a villain that I would say out of all of them that Jack Sparrow faced is the one that caused him the most damage, alongside Davy Jones. I think out of all the villains that he faced, from Davy Jones, Salazar, Barbossa, Blackbeard, Cutler Beckett, I think Salazar and Davy Jones, I think they hurt him more than the rest. So that also for me is kind of when it comes to villain, that's kind of another bonus point for Salazar as a villain and everything. But again, nothing much is unknown for him, because again, like I said, he's a very traditional villain, which, like I said, from starting with the ghost thing, going back to life with a purpose, being destroyed by the main protagonist in the past, coming back for revenge, and doing everything, just simply, out of vengeance, just so the villain can get the main hero. That's what basically Salazar does. And and one of the things I love this about Salazar's character, that even though he's a ghost, he still believes that he's doing everything for his king, basically. For example, when he tied up upside down Barbossa's crew, and he's like, by the rule of the king, I sentence you all to death. You kind of also see that he kind of believes that everything he's doing is still for his king, for his nation, that he's doing this for the greater good, all this mass slaughter and everything, So, so again, that's also one of the things I always found interesting about Salazar himself and all that. I mean, it's amazing, when it comes to when you have villains who have obsessions, especially, with revenge and all of that, they always amaze me. Like I said, usually they're the type of villains that they don't give a shit about anything. No one can reason with it. No one can stop them. They don't care about if they lose their crew, or their country, or in this case ship or city, whatever. Like, they will do anything in their power just so they can destroy the same person or thing that destroyed their lives in the beginning. Yeah. Yeah, that's for sure. Now, one of the things I will also say is one of the positives for Salazar. Why I think, like, why also makes him a worthy opponent is, of course, he's a fucking ghost. Like I mentioned before, no one can kill him, no one can shoot him. You know, he can go through anything. So, man, it's still, like, it amazes me what they did with the CGI with all those ghosts. Oh my god, like floating in water and everything. So fascinating, so fascinating. I mean, I always found, like, ghost villains very, very fascinating. As villains, in general. So now, I don't remember exactly what was the rating I gave Davy Jones when I did him in season one. But for Salazar as a villain, I will definitely give him the rating of. Oof, let's see. Let's see. With everything in mind, with the flaws and everything, I will give Salazar as a villain. I will give him. Yeah, you know what? I'm gonna give it a solid 8 out of 10. He really deserves it. Like I said, the only reason why he didn't get a 10 out of 10, like Shadows, is just because the overall same thing that basically guided him also destroyed him. You know. So again, my suggestion to those kind of villains, if you want to have revenge, you know, just be basically just try to be in balance. Okay, don't try the hatred and anger and rage, all that, take the better of you and everything. No, just be calm, be in balance, be cool, be in control. Then maybe something might happen. Who knows? But overall, yeah, I will give, like, Salazar an 8 out of 10 as a villain. Definitely, yeah. I mean, definitely well deserved. Yeah, man, he was great. He was really great. I mean, classically written and everything, nothing much deeper about him and all of that. But, I like his conviction. I like his belief. I mean, even though his beliefs, I always said, were kind of radical, destroying everybody, without giving them a fair trial, or even though in those days they usually they usually still end up being hanged. But, instead of giving them a fair trial, or even, like, give them mercy and everything, no, nothing. Like, just blowing them up, just kill them all. Only that way the seas can finally be pure. And I love, like, he was standing, like, when he was alive, like, all victorious, like victory is mine. I love that. I love that. Anyway, with all said and done, my Follows Darkness, we came to an end to another Villains Review episode. I hope you enjoyed this, like, super fun time reviewing about Armando Salazar, as I did. But overall, you guys know the tradition. Comment, like, subscribe. Give me all personal thoughts about, Captain Salazar. What did you thought of him as a villain? What did you thought about his role in the Pirates of the Caribbean 5 overall, or the movie as well? Everything in the comment section down below. Stay tuned, and until next time, like always, Lord of Shadows, signing off. See you guys next time on another Villains Review episode. Or, as I like to say, later, fuckers.